Welcome back to the It's a Classic podcast. I'm your host, Zion Lashua, and today I am joined by a very special guest, my good friend, Nicholas Cohn. Nick, say hello.
Hello, everybody. Hello, listeners.
Okay, perfect. So the first things first, I guess. So today's episode is going to be set in Roman history, right? It's one of my first kind of forays into Roman history for the podcast, which is exciting. And so we're going to be talking about a name that's kind of come up in a few episodes in the past. And he's known as Caligula is his name, and so I know that you Nick, you're not like you're not a novice to like the ancient world and history, so you know I think more than I think the average person would know. So I think the first thing we kind of do is start off with kind of what is some of the stuff that you already kind of do know about Caligula, and I guess by extension, I guess the Roman kind of empire a bit, right? Because that's kind of the era that we're kind of in.
Yeah. Just a little bit of confession, a little context. That's only going to probably come back to bite me as we go through this. I was in Latin club for something like 7 years. I took 5 years of Latin, and so I know things about Rome. The trouble is, as much as I know those things, I'm only like 80% confident in a lot of them. So there's a lot of facts that I have rattling around in there that I don't think I can reliably depend upon.
Okay, yeah,
But
sure.
with regard to Caligula, I know that he was a pretty not good guy. But that just tends to be my judgment about a lot of the emperors. I just don't trust if they're an emperor unless they are like Marcus Aurelius, and even him, I don't know enough about to like to double down and say I like him. But
No, I think
Caligula,
Marcus Aurelius, you might be able to double down a bit. You could double down maybe on his on his mind, right? Because he's he has some interesting kind of thoughts popping around in there. But yeah, no, sorry, yeah, Caligula, you were saying?
no, yeah, he's a little Marcus Aurelius, a little bit less head empty than some of the other emperors. I mean,
Right,
Caligula, his name sounds like Dracula. Like this guy is gonna be
right.
a piece of work.
That's his that's already a plus for him, or a negative.
And
I'm not sure.
and if I remember, as I learned, I believe from a previous podcast, I think Caligula had the horse senator.
Hmm.
So I do know that, but I mean that's I know an early emperor, and that's I think as far as the knowledge goes for me.
Okay, perfect. I think that is a good kind of baseline to jump off of because if you have kind of the stage can be set and then you can just kind of get more of the details going on. So, well, that's good to hear, Nick, because the story of Caligula, it's a classic. Then the intro plays.
Everybody's ears thoroughly blasted, ready to go,
I've,
rock
I've,
and roll.
I've,
I love
I've
that
tried.
intro. It's so jazzy.
I've tried to make the audio not as abrupt, but yes, for especially I believe it was the one of the Heracles episodes was especially brutal on the ears.
It's waking
I think,
everybody up. If for
yeah.
anybody who's listening in the morning, if they listen to the podcast, if they're out driving on the
Any
highway,
anyone
if you see a
anyone
car
who's
swerve suddenly,
you know
they
that
got to the
it's a
intro.
it's a classic listener.
Yeah.
If anyone's listening in the morning, mistake. Anyway, this source that I'm using, right, is from a guy named Suetonius. And Suetonius was kind of a secretary to a much later emperor, to Emperor Hadrian, right? So like an emperor
Mhm.
kind of like further into the Roman Empire's history. And basically what happened is he had access to all of the records of the past emperors, right? So he decided to like
Yeah.
compile all of those records into kind of a condensed down like history of the early emperors. So he starts with Julius Caesar and then goes, I don't remember the last one that he goes to, but it's like 12 different emperors that he talks about. And
Hmm.
so because you kind of have to think about what's the kind of motivation, like why would Suetonius want to exaggerate the faults of these people, or would he want to paint them in like a better light because he's trying to do a history of like that's the kind of the things we have to wonder about, right? And
Yeah, I was curious if that would be like a propaganda document or if it would be like an expose, like the things you didn't know about the first 12 emperors.
And I think it more is along the lines of just a history, because the Suetonius was at his heart, I think he was a historian. He liked to catalog things. So I think that what happened is when he had access to these records, he was just like, oh, these have got to be like compiled in a way that's like digestible, instead of just like messes of documents and like diary entries and these kind of things.
Yeah.
But I have to think that there was a bit of him being like, oh, this is juicy stuff. I gotta get it out there. And later, actually, he was fired from his job because he apparently like had an affair with the emperor's wife. So I don't think they ended
Oh.
up on good terms.
Oh.
Hadrian and Suetonius. But
Got
anyway,
a
so
little bit
that's
too comfortable with
I
the
know.
emperors.
So that's the source that we're going off of. Before we can talk about Caligula, we first have to talk about a dude named Germanicus. So we got to go back like about a generation before. So this dude Germanicus was adopted by Tiberius, his uncle, and after Augustus, the famous Augustus Caesar, died,
Yeah.
Tiberius took over as emperor. So Germanicus was the adopted son of the emperor, basically.
Okay.
And Germanicus was put in charge of the forces of Germany. And however, all of his soldiers.
That's apt. Wait, was it named Germany
For, like-
already?
that's a good kind of a paradox that I'm not exactly sure of. I mean, I'm sure there is an answer, but I don't actually have it. Like, was it Germany because of Germanicus, or was Germanicus because of Germany?
It's an orange situation. Is it the color
Yes,
of the
right.
fruit? We'll find out.
Yeah, maybe I can pop in after doing more research and finding out about that. That's actually a good question that I did not even think to ask.
No, you're fine.
Whoa. Before too much more speculation, let's let Editing Zion pop in and clarify this whole mess. So, actually, Germany received its name from the Latin Germania, which means fertile lands. And Germanicus was given the name Germanicus posthumously in regards to his successes in Germany. And before this, he was likely known as Nero Drusus, after his father. So it really does come down to Germanicus being named after Germany, not Germany being named after Germanicus, which would be pretty ridiculous. Okay, anyway, back to the show.
So, however, all of his soldiers, which this is a pretty common thing to happen in Rome, they wanted Germanicus to be emperor, not Tiberius. So, like his soldiers were like, oh, we love you so much, we want you to rule. And he's like, my dad's got it. So Germanicus distracted them by heading off on a campaign, destroying the king of Armenia. So he
Classic distraction. Just normal, normal distraction.
Destroying a kingdom.
Guys, no, I'm going to destroy. I don't want to rule. I just need to kill some people, okay?
Wait, look over there. A kingdom to destroy. Yeah. So Germanicus was super, super popular. He was handsome and he was strong. A weird thing that like the source that Suetonius talks about is that his legs were a little underdeveloped, but still good enough, which is kind of a weird dig to throw at someone.
I mean, if the arms are good, then who cares about the legs? As
as
people
they all
focus on
say,
different muscles.
as they all say, you should skip leg day. I think that's the rule.
Yeah.
So another thing, he was a beautiful writer, Germanicus. He argued cases in court. And he was understanding and kind. He was all around. There seems to be no faults with this man.
No, this man sounds wonderful.
Yeah. Germanicus was so beloved that he was in danger of being mobbed to death whenever he returned to Rome. Because all the Praetorian Guard and the, quote, entire people of Rome came out to greet him. And they would just, like, swarm him, trying to, like, touch him like the Jonas Brothers at a concert or something.
That sounds... That is a nightmare. That is terrifying. Props to him for even being able to deal with something like that at all. Like that would be... Ooh. And nowadays, too, in COVID era. Ooh.
Right, he's like, everybody stand back.
Yeah, no. I don't know about diseases yet, but I got a feeling.
We don't know anything about germs just yet. Well, the Greeks knew a bit about germs, but like, we're not gonna get detailed research until later. Oh, dude, he was like
Germanicus.
He was like, I'm immune to the germs. I am one of them. So, he married a woman named Agrippa the Elder, and they had 9 children. 2 of them died in infancy. 1 of them died in late childhood, and then there was some that lived. There was Agrippa the Younger. There was Drusilla. There was Livilla. There was Nero, not the famous Nero. There was Drusus, and then there was Gaius Caesar. So, and Gaius is the one we're going to be talking about.
Oh,
so,
okay.
So that's the thing that I just didn't know, that I guess this is a spoiler for like 5 minutes from now, but Caligula's real name is Gaius Caesar.
Interesting. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
curious what the story is going to be for that.
Yeah. So here's Gaius Caesar's early years. He was born in Antium, and he grew up amongst the soldiers, right? So when his father Germanicus was like in Germany, kind of on his campaigns, that's where he kind of grew up.
Yeah.
And so he wore a miniature version of the uniform that the soldiers wore, right? So he had like little miniature like tunic and little miniature helmet and all this stuff. So he was just like the cute kind of
Decked
soldier
out in his little
mascot.
outfit. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the troops all loved him. They even gave him a nickname. The nickname referred to the small boots that he wore. Caligula, or Caligula, became his nickname. So he was actually Caligula, literally I believe means just like little boot.
See, I
So
wouldn't
that
expect it to be an affectionate name. It again,
it
maybe
sounds
it
evil.
could just be
Yes.
the Dracula proxy, but it doesn't sound like, oh yes, this is my dear little sweet cousin Caligula. Like it doesn't quite have the ring to it. Maybe I just don't have the ear for the ancient Roman times. But
So yeah, so that was that's how he got his nickname, and it stuck, obviously. So
did he
he
like it?
then
Was it something that he?
I think it's something that he embraced. The thing is, I think what's happened is I think that he throughout most of his life went by Gaius Caesar. I don't imagine that like in the court people were calling him Caligula. But it's interesting that this is kind of the name that has become associated with him in the modern era, right? That's like kind of all we talk about him known as. So I don't imagine he hated it, but I think he probably had, based on some stuff that will come later, I think his ego was big enough that he probably would make people refer to him like by his proper name. I would imagine.
Yeah, it depends on how familiar you are with him. Then he'll
Yeah,
let you call him Caligula.
exactly. So then he accompanied his father Germanicus on an expedition into Syria, but unfortunately at Antioch, Germanicus contracted some kind of disease and died at age 33. So that's the end of the beloved Germanicus.
Germanicus, it came true.
he did. He
should have
did die.
listened. He should have listened to his intuitions. No.
So many suspected poison because of the dark stains on his skin and the fact that his heart didn't burn in the pyre. Supposedly, a heart steeped in poison didn't burn. The obvious culprit was Tiberius, his adoptive father, a man who was surely jealous at the colossal amounts of attention that Germanicus was getting. Like the popularity difference was insane, even though Tiberius was the emperor and Germanicus was just his adoptive son.
Was Tiberius unpopular? Like, was he a disliked person by compare, or was it just like not as adored?
I think he was somewhat disliked. So I think he probably felt very threatened by his son, who was very popular.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to say it justifies a poisoning even, because it doesn't. But like, if it was something a little more petty, like, oh, like he just doesn't get as a loud like woo from the audience every time. Like, if he's not getting, oh man, the people aren't nearly crushing me to death every time they see me. Like, if it's that kind of jealousy, then that I would take a little more issue with it. But
right.
Hey everybody, Editing Zion, popping back in to clarify something else. While Tiberius was highly militarily successful, he was often referred to and remembered as dark, brooding, and mysterious. And in his later career, while he was abroad, he was a victim of espionage, and there were rumors spread all about him. The topics of the rumors included everything from treason to debauchery. These rumors, while not completely true, did do a ton to completely destroy his image, and was mostly hated by the Roman people.
So then, soon after, Tiberius also convinced the Senate that Nero and Drusus were public enemies, so two of the other children of Germanicus, right? And had them executed. So that doesn't look good. Like looking back on the poisoning issue.
no, yeah, like it wasn't me, but am I going to use this to kill some kids? I mean,
I think I probably am.
who would miss out on that opportunity?
So now we have the reaction to the death of Germanicus. So
Okay.
I think the biggest proof of Rome's love for this man was the reaction to his death. When they first heard of his illness, all of Rome was stunned. A rumor got spread that he had recovered, so all of Rome rejoiced. They marched to the Capitol with torches and sacrificial victims, and they sang, and there's a quote for the song they sang. I don't know how it went. But the lyrics are, "All is well again at Rome, all is well again at home. Here's an end to all our pain, Germanicus is well again." Interesting that it rhymes in English.
I
But,
was just about to say that. Very, very conscious of them to take translations into account ahead of
to a
time.
language that didn't exist yet.
It shows the strength of the organizational skills of these people. Just the love of Germanic.
I think it probably just comes down to the translator of the version of Suetonius that I'm reading, who decided to kind of make it flow like a song. Who I don't know their name at the moment, but I'll probably put it in post.
Just want to give a quick shout out to Robert Graves, the translator for the Suetonius version that I was reading, and the one who made sure that this song somehow rhymed in English. Okay, anyway, back to the show.
So
it could be. It could be. That could be it. Yeah.
No, I'm gonna go on the fact that the Roman citizens looked ahead and made sure that it would rhyme in all versions.
Yeah.
So then, when the evidence of his death finally did break, right? So they were all singing and cheering because they heard that he had recovered, and then when they had to be like, no, he's actually dead, the populace stoned temples, they upset altars, they refused to acknowledge their newborn children. Wars stopped.
Wait, that one.
They were just
they refused to acknowledge their newborn children.
You know, like their newborn starts crying, and they're like, "You're crying, I'm crying. Germanicus is dead."
Oh my god.
Maybe it's something like that probably.
I think people are just it's some opportunism. They're just like, you know what? I don't want this kid. It's Germanicus.
This is an excuse. This is an excuse to not care for my child.
Yes.
Wars stopped. Princes and kings shaved their beards and their wives' heads. And the for mourning.
Yeah.
And the King of Kings, the King of Persia, canceled his hunting trip. I don't know if that's exactly the same, but it's he acknowledged the sad.
But I think you're right. I think it's what you're saying. Like, it's a testament to German. Now I'm sad because I like Germanicus too. He sounds really cool. I'm bummed. I don't want him to be dead.
Well, don't worry. His kid is going to be so cool as well.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm sure that this can't go poorly. I'm fully confident.
So now, Caligula. I'm going to call him Caligula, even though he often probably went by Gaius. So Caligula lived with his mother after his father's death. Then Tiberius exiled his mom and summoned Caligula to live in the palace. So he was horribly mistreated in the palace, but he was never killed.
Okay.
But Tiberius knew of Caligula's horrible habits. So Caligula, even from a young age, loved watching torture and executions, and would disguise himself and escape the palace to engage in debauchery.
I think that we can see the pattern for that behavior. Maybe him dressing up like a soldier and being around soldiers wasn't good for him. Maybe we can say definitively, don't dress up your kids as soldiers and put them in war zones. It'll I mean, who knows? I'm not going to say everybody.
Probably won't be good for their mental health. You're probably right.
At the very least, he learned how to disguise. Like that. That's nothing
he learned.
You never want to teach a young child. They'll use it. They'll abuse it.
So, Caligula married a woman named Junia Claudia. I don't know what they do with the double I's in like Latin. What do they do with the double I's in Latin? It's probably just like an adaptation of a sound that they made.
Typically, it's used as like an ending, so it's like Claudii, but like I don't know how it would go with L's afterwards as well. Again, though, slightly Dracula sounding name.
True. So we'll just go with Caligula married Junia was her name. Mm-hmm. Then she died, and he immediately seduced the wife of the guard commander.
Like the Praetorian Guard?
Yes, the Praetorian Guard commander, who was currently still guarding his adoptive grandfather Tiberius.
Okay.
Through her, he was able to gain the commander's trust somehow. So he seduced the commander's wife and then used her to learn things about her husband, so then he could get in on the goods with him.
Getting all the secrets, a little bit of, I don't know if that would qualify as pillow talk, but
yeah, I know.
Pillow secrecy.
So he used this to his advantage. Caligula then poisoned Tiberius and then demanded the royal ring while he was still breathing. So he was like, give me the ring.
Okay, that's kind of cool. It is kind of cool.
The guard then, the people around were like, he's still alive, my lord, or whatever they called him. And then he was like,
Oh
he was like,
Lord.
oh, for sure. And he took a pillow and smothered Tiberius to death.
Oh no.
So that he,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Sorry, I just need to take a moment.
yeah, it's
That's
fine.
a lot.
I
That
know
is.
the
I
the
was kind
balls
of on
on this
board with the
man.
poisoning because it could be kind of like a revenge. It's like a nice Edmond Dantes moment, and
Mm-hmm.
he's getting back like it. But smothering, that that makes my bones shake a little. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, unlike you, the people of Rome loved it.
Oh no.
Because they still remembered Germanicus really fondly, and they, of course, the rumors were circling that Tiberius was the one that poisoned him.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, as Caligula escorted Tiberius's body to Rome proper, crowds gathered and cheered. And when he arrived, the House and Senate immediately gave him absolute power, ignoring Tiberius's will, which specified that it would go to his other kid by an actual son of his. Because Caligula was only his through adoption of Germanicus, whereas Tiberius
Yeah.
also just had a son who he said in his will, I want him to be the next emperor. And the Senate was like, nah, this dude.
No, does Suetonius even mention the son's name, or is he just like
He
not
I
worth
think
mentioning?
I think he does say the son's name, but I didn't deem him worth mentioning.
He will be consigned to history, forgotten.
And so then the celebrations were so wild. 160,000 victims were publicly sacrificed during the celebration of Caligula's takeover.
Ah,
And whenever Caligula would fall ill in these early times of his rule, people would besiege the palace in prayer. Some would hold up signs saying that they would be a gladiator if he lives, and some would say that they should die instead. So Caligula, he was pretty popular.
that is quite the response. Like I'm not surprised because people have done similar things in all kinds of
in
history.
Right, sure.
Outside of certain hospitals and different places in maybe the last 4 months, but no,
Right.
that's becoming
That's
a
true.
gladiator though too. Like I almost get like, no, take me instead, but like, what? Like I might go in the fighting ring if you live.
If you
Like,
live,
you should
I
be
will...
my number one
Yeah,
fan.
So here's some of the... So I've divided kind of the next section into some different topics, right? So here's the popular stuff, right? The stuff that people liked him for. So he delivered a funeral speech for Tiberius, and he was weeping the whole time, so he was super convincing that he was sad about him being dead. He honored his deceased family by giving them a proper burial. So
Okay.
like his brothers and people like that who were like executed. He then changed the month of September to Germanicus for his father, which didn't stick, obviously.
I was about to say it no longer.
Nope. He made it so that all of his sisters had to be included in oaths that invoked his name. So like, because it was pretty common to be like, pray things like, oh, good fortune. Like I have a quote here, good fortune attend the emperor, right? Like people would just say
Okay.
things like that. But he made it so like, oh, if you say that, you have to also say, and his sisters.
How
So
many
good
sisters did he
fortune.
have again? Was
He had-
it just
he had
two?
2 sisters, yes.
Okay, so that's easy to remember then. If it was like
Yeah.
an 8 sister situation.
He had to like keep going and going.
Yeah.
He recalled all exiles, and then he burned all the testimony of those who spoke against his mother and brothers, right? So basically what happened is Tiberius kind of brought up crimes against his mother and brothers, and then like other people would agree, right, in order for the vote to pass for them to be exiled or executed.
Yeah.
So he decided he's like that's like we'll call that like water under the bridge. Let's burn all the evidence. It's fine.
Yeah. I don't see. Were any of the things legitimate? Might some of them have been criminal? Zion, do you know? Were you there?
No, I don't know.
I know you have a time machine. Tell me.
The other thing here that I like is he banished perverts from the city. He found him, and he got him out. He got rid of the perverts.
I mean, I'm suspecting that he is one, so I'm guessing he just doesn't want
What?
competition. I don't know that.
No.
I don't have. I just think it's gonna swing that way. I mean,
This is a thing that he did that was kind of interesting. He began to publish an imperial budget, so he was much more upfront about the spending of the government. Kind of good.
okay, yeah, that's cool.
He reformatted the government to be more efficient and representative. He gifted members of the house 3 gold pieces on multiple occasions. He threw banquets and invited knights and their wives. And at one banquet, he saw the knight across from him was eating with gusto, so he sent over his own plate to him. And he saw a senator doing the same and promoted him. So he was like, oh, you're enjoying the food so much. Here's some more food. Here's a promotion. I love you all so much.
It's some good celebration. It's good vibes. It's good feelings in the
Yeah,
in the
his-
Caligula.
in the
Regime.
Caligula Banquets, yeah. So then he loved gladiatorial and circus events. So he organized boxing matches. He introduced panther baiting and the Trojan War dance, both of which were not explained very well
Okay,
in
I
Suetonius.
was going to ask explain, but I will refrain.
I am assuming
panther baiting. I'm especially interested.
a
I'm
panther was
guessing
involved. Panthers were involved, and I assume it's fighting panthers in the ring.
The panthers were baited.
They were baited to probably attack people.
Yeah.
He decorated the circus, which is like the horse racing track,
Mhm.
in all manner of colors for events. Once, and I love this, once while he was inspecting the chariots, right? He's just like looking over the chariots. Some men called out from a nearby balcony. They're like, "What about a day of racing, eh, Caesar?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, okay." And he immediately ordered a day of racing.
Listening to the people.
Yeah.
To the people, giving them what they want.
He also improved infrastructure and completed construction projects and started ones of his own. There was also something that Suetonius called the fantastic spectacle. And this was Caligula basically, he collected all available merchant ships and lined them up 3 miles, poured dirt over them, and created an isthmus, right? So he basically created a land bridge between like a bay near Rome.
Oh.
So there was like a big bay, right? And he lines up all the boats across the bay, pours dirt over
Yeah.
them. So now there's like a land bridge connecting the 2 sides of the bay.
So wait, so he poured dirt on top of the boats.
Like he basically buried the ships in earth.
Yeah. So like
yeah.
that's a lot of ships. Oh, okay.
It is a lot of ships.
It's a waste. Like I'm not gonna say it's a waste of ships because you got an isthmus, but interesting. Okay.
He then crossed it 2 days in a row. So the first day he wore gold, a lot of gold, and the second he dressed as a gladiator and drove horses over it, followed by the entire Praetorian Guard who were also on chariots. So he just like rode across this isthmus that he created. Now you might be asking why? Why did he do this?
Yeah. What is the isthmus? Yeah. Why?
So some say that this was to one up Xerxes and his achievement for doing something similar in the Persian War against the Greeks. So he did something similar to create like kind of like a bridge to go around the Greek forces and gain an advantage. So that's one thing. Another one was to perhaps terrify the Germans and Britons with their engineering. So, there's other kind of societies developing, and he's like, oh, well, we could build an isthmus. And then another reason, but so this is an interesting kind of, we don't get much look into Suetonius as a person from this text, but this is actually a kind of a side that he mentioned. He said, my grandfather always used to tell me that when Tiberius was choosing who, So Suetonius said that this is what his grandfather used to tell him. When Tiberius was choosing who he would decide to be his successor, he chose another. One of his advisors was saying, Gaius has no more chance of becoming emperor than riding a horse dry-shod across the Gulf of Baiae. So basically, when Tiberius was like deciding who he would designate as his successor, he picked his like birth son, of course. One of his advisors was like, oh yeah, a good choice, because Gaius has no more chance of becoming emperor than he does of crossing this bay on land.
Yeah.
Which I like that reason the most, I think.
I think too. I do too. It at the very least gives me a little bit of an insight into Caligula's personality. Just a lot of it thus far just seems to be driven by a middle finger to Tiberius. Even the competent stuff, like, oh, I fixed the roads, and you want to know who couldn't do that? Tiberius.
Tiberius. Yeah. So that's the end of the section that I called the popular stuff. The next section
is that a significantly shorter section than what is about to come? I know that this might be a repeated bit, but legit. Oh no!
Oh no!
This is much worse than I
no!
Oh god! Oh no!
The popular stuff was less than a page. I will say that. So Suetonius, to transition, he said, quote, so much for the emperor. The rest of this history must deal with the monster. I thought that was pretty cool, so I wrote that down.
I wish Wikipedia pages were written that dramatically nowadays. Like, I cannot think of the modern example. I'm sure that they exist out there, but I just like that isn't. I'm not going to say that I want a Wikipedia page for myself written transitioning to the monster, but like something like that's exciting. That's suspense.
So, to start off, right, Caligula wanted to be treated as a god. He ordered that all the heads of statues should be destroyed and replaced with his own head.
At least not the penises. Am I
At
right?
least not no exactly a callback. I think basically every episode I think we have to have a callback to Alcibiades and the penises.
Oh yeah.
I think it's just mandated.
Mhm.
So he hugely expanded the royal palace. He built himself a colossal shrine with a life-size golden statue whose clothes always matched what he was wearing. So he had people who had to go to the statue and change its clothes so that it would match him, like every day.
Would he go and worship at this shrine? Would he be? Would just other people? Because that.
I think I imagine it was other people he would require them to go and worship at his shrine.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And he would invite the moon goddess into his bed every night and would talk to Jupiter every day, at least according to him.
I'm guessing that neither of them showed up. If I had to guess, I don't know that for certain, but I'm gonna bet no. Especially the moon goddess. Jupiter sounds like he might be interested.
I labeled this section early kills. So first, his grandmother Caligula refused to give her guards and maybe poisoned her. Tiberius Gemellus, Caligula thought this man's breath smelled like a poison antidote and executed him for assuming that he was poisoned.
Oh my.
I
was just gonna say that probably a lot of people's breath smelled like that back then due to the poor dental stuff, but no, that
apparently his breath was just from cough medicine that he was taking.
Oh. Is that a Ricola, or are you trying to kill me? Anybody caught a cough drop? Oh no, you're dead.
Oh God. Marcus Silenus, another man, he forced him to cut his own throat with a razor for not sailing with the imperial ship, but Caligula assumed that the reason that Marcus stayed was to seize power while the imperial ship departed. In reality, Silenus was just a bad sailor and didn't want to go sailing.
Oh, that's sad. That's actually really sad.
So then his sisters, right? We know them.
Yeah.
He loved his sisters, maybe a little bit too much, because there was a lot of rumors of incest about them.
As apparently, the emperors do.
Apparently, even in their youth. He took his sister Drusilla from her husband and treated her as a wife. And at Drusilla's death, because she died shortly after, he made it a capital offense to laugh, bathe, or dine with anyone for the mourning period. So he made sure that everyone was sad when his sister died.
Yeah, that doesn't leave a lot for people to do.
No laughing, no bathing, no eating.
Just crying, just tears.
You must just cry. He had some marriages, right? We know of one already. But so he attended the wedding of a man named Gaius Piso and Livia Orestia. He sat across from them at the table, and weirdly enough, he shouted at Gaius Piso, "Hands off my wife." This woman was not his wife. He then took this wife home and married her, and then divorced her, and then banished her. Very quickly.
Wow. I mean, I get it. Maybe there was a misprint on the invitation. Like he saw the Gaius, and he was just like, "This is my wedding." I forgot. No, I realized that I've seen them be married by what?
Oh God, is that today?
Should I have been up there? Oh
no. He demanded that Laulia Paulina, wife of a governor, be sent to him because he heard that she was beautiful. He then divorced her and banished her again. And then there was one woman who he did actually kind of marry and stick with for a while, whose name was Saisona. And he had a child with her and named her Julia Drusilla after his sister, who was dead.
I don't like the direction for that. I get that he loves his sister, but I don't think he should name anybody after her after all of that. It sounds like the wives that got banished are getting the best possible outcome.
I think you might be right. So he made senators run behind him in a chariot. So he would just be in his chariot and would make senators just run after him, just for fun.
It's an exercise program. He cares about their health.
You're really going hard defending.
Yeah.
Often, he would send for men that he had killed. So he would kill these men, right? He'd have them killed, and he'd be like, "Oh, where is that person? Send them to me." And then he would pretend to be surprised when they didn't show up. He's like, "What? They're dead? That's crazy."
I bet the first few times the Praetorian Guard were just like, should we tell him? Like, I don't want to tell him. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if he's being serious, and if he is, I think he's gonna kill me.
He also loved to stir up trouble and chaos. He would scatter gift vouchers to cause stampedes in the theater. He would remove canopies during the hottest hours of the day in the gladiatorial arena. Like, he would just take the canopies off so people were just in the sun because he'd like to watch them sweat.
God.
He closed granaries so that people would go hungry, just because.
I can't spin that one. That one I can't do.
It's kind of hard to spin that one.
He's trying. Exercise. Keeping the resources in stock.
Nailed it.
Rations. There we go.
Rations. There we go. He also was incredibly bloodthirsty. He fed prisoners to the animals for the shows, right? That's nothing that crazy. But do you remember?
Wait. Are you?
Yeah.
Did you just offend him? Did you just say that? That's
Maybe,
not that
maybe. Well, that's you feed prisoners to the animals. Whatever. They gotta eat. And he shut down the granaries, so what else are they gonna eat?
You're right. He's avoiding animal abuse. You're correct. He's keeping. I didn't see it that way.
Nick, do you remember what people would promise him when he was sick? Towards the beginning of his reign.
Oh yeah, they would die. They would die to keep him healthy.
Yeah. So they also promised something else. He forced those who swore to be a gladiator, if he recovered, to be a gladiator. And he also forced those who said that they should die in his place to jump off cliffs to their deaths. So really, he liked people to follow through on their word, I think is what we're learning.
A commitment to honesty. It's to be admired. It's to be celebrated.
Those who criticized his shows or refused to acknowledge his genius, he branded them and had them sent to the mines and confined them to tiny cages.
It shows like he wrote plays
these gladiatorial shows.
Gladiatorial.
Like,
I was curious if he had a Broadway career on the side or something like that.
Well, actually, I think that does actually come up in a bit.
Ooh,
maybe.
Ooh.
He also loved executions. Classic. This one, oh man, good luck spinning this. He made parents attend the executions of their children.
Okay. What I will say is that do we not want the parents to be with the kids when they are?
Oh God,
we don't want them to be alone. No, I'm not going to do that with that.
That's a pretty
monster,
good spin.
Absolute monster.
It's a pretty good spin. A soldier once cried out that he was innocent as he was being fed to the beasts. Caligula then was like, stop. So he called off the beasts. And then he goes into the arena. He cuts out the man's tongue. And then he's like, okay, resume. He can no longer say that he's innocent.
Oh my God.
But
do people still love him at this point in time?
I think they're scared. I think they're scared to not love him.
Okay. They're scared of how much they love him. It's a Michael. That's Michael Scott, right?
Yeah, I think so. I want them to be scared of how much they love me.
They love me.
His favorite way to execute someone, though, was to inflict them with hundreds of small wounds and let them die slowly. So he liked to paper cut people to death.
God.
He once, this I thought was quite interesting. He once asked an exile, right? Because he brought back all the exiles, right? Well, most of them. He asked this exile, how did you spend your time, when you were outside of Rome? And the man replied that he prayed for the death of Tiberius so that he could return home, right? Because Tiberius is the one who exiled him.
I feel like that's a mistake. You should not have said that.
Caligula then realizes, wait, that means all the exiles that are out of Rome right now are praying for my death. So he then sent out assassins to kill all exiles so that they could not wish for him to die.
Oh my God. He's being thorough. He's preventing negative manifesting.
I know.
Against him.
His paranoia is kind of transcends all bounds, which I think is amazing.
He is persistent, as shown by his ability to make an isthmus. It's just gone too far.
He would complain about how bad things were. He would say things like, there hasn't been a natural disaster in so long. Everyone is going to forget about my rule because nothing bad happened. Like, I didn't save anybody from an earthquake or something.
See, I thought that was going to go in the direction of oh man, there's not enough grain for the people. Like, he was complaining about his own policies. I did not expect it to be natural disasters, but I mean, yeah, he hasn't had a chance to be the hero that he knows that he is.
The complaining about his own policies, I think, is exactly up his alley, though. Like,
Yeah.
the vibe of him calling for someone who he had killed and then being like, "Oh no," is like totally him being like, "Man, the people, they're so hungry. If only we had more grain."
Yeah. If only we had the resource. He just completely covered in gold. If only we had the money to give them what they need.
Mm-hmm. So here's some. I labeled this for a bonus cruelty. He held torture while he was eating for ambiance. So he would like be eating his meal and people would be tortured. It's like instead of having someone play the violin, someone would just be being stabbed.
I mean, I appreciate some nice ambiance. I
I know
typically
you
go
do.
for
I know
like
you do.
fireplace. Yeah, no, you know my enthusiasm. Like I would prefer rain noises, but I mean, I'm sure the sound of blood hitting the floor is a
Is
similar
a lot like rain.
sound, just with more screaming, just with a little more.
He invited onlookers onto his boat as he was inspecting a new bridge, and then pushed them over the edge of the boat and beat them with oars.
That one's a little funny.
That one is a little funny. He was like, "Come look at the bridge from the water," and they're like, "Wow!" And then he's just like, "Ha ha, yeet."
Yeah, it's like pushing your friend in a pool, and then
The problem-
oh man, they have their phone in their pocket. Oh,
Yeah, the problem is that he just didn't let them back on the boat.
I mean that.
And this one I think really kind of reveals just the insanity I think behind this man.
Mhm.
He would often burst into laughter at banquets, right? He would just randomly start laughing. And then people would be like, "Oh, what's so funny?" And he would be like, "It's hilarious that all I would have to do to have you all killed is just to say that you should die." And then I don't know how you respond to that. If someone says that to you.
This man has been. I know that it didn't exist, but I feel like he's just reading some existential. He's just too edgy. Like that's something,
know.
like very like. Oh man, like death just comes for all of us, but I could make it come real
But
quick,
yeah.
guys.
He reminded me kind of the Joker right there, honestly. Like he'd just be laughing and they'd be like, "You could all die right now if I
Yeah,
wanted you to." Yeah.
yeah.
Once he stood next to a statue of Jupiter and asked a guy named Apelles, who was an actor,
Mhm.
who was greater. He's like, "Oh, who's greater between me and Jupiter?" Apelles hesitated for a second, and then Caligula had him flogged.
Well, his mistake was that it was between a statue and Caligula, and
It's
clearly, like he's just talking about the statue, not
Well,
Caligula.
and the other thing, based on earlier information, that statue's head was just the head of Caligula,
Yeah.
Jupiter's body.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the same then.
So you can see how I think how Apelles would be kind of like,
Yeah. I like to think, or maybe he just had AirPods in. I know it's
He just didn't hear
but
him.
it
He's like,
could
"What?"
be. It could be.
He
He
takes
just
one, like,
didn't
"What?"
hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? Excuse me. What?
He made it so no bust of any living person could be displayed without his okay. So if they wanted to display a bust, he's like, no. He wanted to outlaw Homer, Virgil, and Livy. He wanted to outlaw basically, he wanted to outlaw knowledge.
Yeah, literature.
But here's the thing: he wanted to outlaw them because he claimed they had no talent and little learning, which I think is very funny.
That would be the time if he had his own book to start publishing it then and there, because then he'd just be like, can't read anything else, but let me tell you, I've got my own thing.
He just
right
writes like horrible like Homer fan fiction. he
wonder-
writes yeah.
here. Or go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say he writes himself like into the Trojan War or something, right? He's like, and then Caligula ran out from the crowd and stabbed everybody.
And stabbed Caligula. Just make himself every character. Yes, I did die like 1,000 times during the
And
Trojan
then
War. but I also
Caligula fired an arrow guided by Caligula into the ankle of Caligula.
And Caligula. Oh my God. That would be funny. That would be worth reading. I would read that. I
It'd be
wonder
really
if Suetonius
confusing.
also took issue. If Suetonius was like, "Man, this guy would have banned me." Like, I have a
He, like,
personal
looks back,
prejudice
he's
against
like-
him.
He's like, man, I wouldn't have had a job.
I really dodged a
um,
bullet.
Yeah, he invited King Ptolemy from Egypt and then ordered his execution because his purple robe attracted too much attention. So basically, like, Ptolemy like made a grand entrance into like the gladiatorial arena, and everyone was like, "Whoa, his purple robe!" And he's like, "That man must die."
Oh my God.
Um,
I have purple T-shirts that would get me killed in ancient Rome. That's what I'm learning.
I think these next couple sentences will make you learn that there's very little that you could do in the presence of Caligula that wouldn't have you be killed.
Your only hope is to avoid, is to just outrun.
Exactly. Any man with a full head of hair in his presence would have their head brutally sheared because Caligula himself was bald.
That is me. My head would be shaved right now.
Yeah, because your hair is so full and voluminous.
Actually, here for those at home, if you want to imagine my hair, just imagine a very sexy version of Beaker, the Muppet Beaker, and that's gonna or Bob Ross.
I was,
That
I
would
was,
work.
I thought you were gonna say a sexy version of Bob Ross, and I was like, Nick, that's just Bob Ross.
Bob Ross is no, you're right. Bob Ross is who I am. Beaker is who I aspire to be.
Once, a gladiator was getting too much attention for like doing well in the gladiatorial arena. So Caligula ran out and tripped and fell down the stairs for attention. Like he tripped on purpose, so the people would like look at him because he's just a child.
He pulled a Jennifer Lawrence at the Oscars. My goodness, trying to be endearing. No.
Wow. Are you like
No.
are you like a Jennifer Lawrence conspiracy theorist? You're like, that was all planned.
Yeah, it was all fake. No, not at all. She's good. She's fine.
That's pretty
No,
funny.
or like the Jason Derulo meme when he's oh no, Caligula's falling down the stairs of the what is it, the Metropolitan Museum.
Yeah. He also, Caligula, I think you may have predicted this earlier. He had sex with a lot of people, men and women. He would examine the wives of his men with a keen eye and would call for them, which is just gross.
Yeah, disgusting.
And then he would then openly talk about his sexual prowess, like during banquets.
It's just tacky.
It is a little tacky.
Sounds like a frat boy.
Yeah, right. So now the next little section that I have is Caligula's extravagance and repercussions. So he invented new baths. They were hot and cold baths, infused with perfumed bath oils. Like he just like invented new kinds of baths. Like he was going off.
I wouldn't go as far to say that undoes some of the damage that he did, but I do enjoy a nice bath every now and then.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say thank you, Caligula.
He invented new dishes and drinks. One thing that he would do is he would take pearls, like from oysters, he would crush them up and dissolve them in vinegar and then drink that. That was like his go-to beverage.
I'm guessing not, but is that healthy? I feel like that might. I don't know how much mercury in the ocean there would be at that point, but I wouldn't be surprised if that explains a little bit.
He also came up with golden bread and golden meat. So he just like would put gold leaf on foods, you know, like we do that today.
Yeah, he's
Following
a
his
modern
footsteps.
New York boutique selling
Yeah.
some nice truffle and gold ice cream.
He was known to say the quote, "A man must either be frugal or Caesar," and I thought that was funny.
Okay.
He would also do a thing where he would just throw money off of the roof of the palace to like the peasants.
Yeah.
He built a new series of ships that were called Liburnian galleys. They had 10 banks of oars. They had jeweled sterns. They had multicolored sails, and they had huge baths, banquet halls, as well as grapevines and fruit trees aboard.
This sounds less like a. I mean, that's a yacht. That's
He just like made a cruise ship basically.
yeah. Impressive. I feel like very useless, but impressive.
Yes.
Like I don't know. I feel like there's just more pressing things that they need to worry about. But I cool.
You know. He squandered Tiberius's entire fortune of 27 million gold pieces.
Oh no. And he's
now-
throwing it all off the roofs. That's
Yeah.
the issue.
And now he needed money. So in order to get money, one of the first things he did was he limited Roman citizenship. Like, and I think you might know this is like, so if you were a Roman citizen, you had to, like, you got tax exemptions basically. And so people who like lived in the Roman Empire but weren't Roman citizens would pay more taxes. So it like benefited you if you wanted to try to become a citizen. So he limited the cuts that they received. So that he increased the taxes on Roman citizens.
Yeah.
He limited how you could get it too. So now you could only inherit it from your father. So if your mother was a Roman citizen, it didn't matter. And he also denied
Patriarchy intensifies.
exactly. He denied all certificates issued by anyone before Tiberius. So basically, if someone was like, "Oh, I have this citizenship made by Augustus," he's like, "Nah, it doesn't count. Sorry."
Less legit. I feel like the newcomers would be well. I don't know.
I know.
Whatever.
He inspired fear in those who did not bequeath their belongings to him after death. So he would basically, he made it so everyone had to basically leave their wealth to the kingdom after they died.
In its entirety, like
they couldn't leave anything to their kids.
no.
Many would declare it's like, okay, yes, I changed my will. I will leave everything that I own to the throne, and then he would have them killed. so that then he could get all their money.
Efficient, fast.
Yeah. He would hold auctions and force people to bid colossal amounts on the auctions.
What kind of things were being
So
sold?
here's an example. There was a man named Aponius Saturninus, who was at the auction and fell asleep on the bench. He nodded in his sleep, right? Like he was nodding. So Caligula took each nod as a bid. When he awoke, he owed 90,000 gold pieces for 13 gladiators that he was purchasing.
Wow.
Thing is, I don't know the going rate of a gladiator, but I think he overpaid.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's pretty steep. But that's so cartoonish. That's hilarious to me. Like that belongs in Tom and Jerry. That's not ancient Rome.
He also put in place a ton of new taxes. He had guards. He stationed a bunch of guards to enforce that these taxes were collected. Every food was now taxed. Like every legal fee increased. He increased taxes on prostitution. Additionally, he didn't announce these taxes. And if you didn't pay them, there was an additional fee for not paying the taxes.
Statesmanship at its finest. Oh my!
So people were mad, right? People were upset about this. So eventually, he posted them in a tiny, awkward, cramped spot that no one could read. So they were posted, but no one ever knew about them. He would cheat and lie in gambling, and he gained a love of the feel of money. He would walk over gold coins and roll in them, like Scrooge McDuck.
Oh
this man is insane. I came across that and I was like, this is wild. I love it so much.
Scrooge McDuck almost becomes a little bit more excusable because like he's a cute little old man and a duck. He's also his monocle, his top hat, like the whole thing, the whole getup. I
also don't know if Scrooge McDuck ever killed anybody. I don't know if that's out there.
I mean, to get that kind of money, I think you have to kill at least a few people.
He had to step on some people for sure.
Yeah, like not entirely legitimate, but like.
Mm-hmm. Hey everybody, Editing Zion here once again. And while last episode, while Sean and I were talking about the anatomy of Zeus as he shapeshifted into a swan, I did say that this was not a duck podcast. I guess that it is kind of a duck podcast a little bit. So here's the first section of the It's a Quacksick podcast. Because I'm here to tell you a bit about the past of Scrooge McDuck. And while Scrooge McDuck may have never killed anybody directly, there was a time when he for sure was the cause of some deaths. In Dell's 4-Color Comics, issue number 238, we learn a bit about Scrooge McDuck's backstory. And this issue, titled Voodoo Hoodoo, described how Scrooge used an army of cutthroats to drive a native tribe off their native land in Africa in order to build a rubber plantation. Not only does the self-described cutthroats not sound too good, but in any case where people are forced off their land, there are deaths due to starvation or the perils of travel. So all I'm saying here is that maybe we shouldn't cut Scrooge McDuck so much slack. Okay, anyway, back to the podcast.
So the next little section that I have is titled Caligula's Campaigns. And for the listeners, I did air quotes around the campaigns. So he decided to go on a German expedition, like his father, Germanicus, right? He demanded that the troops be ready so fast that they had to break tradition and fly their banners from pack mules. He just rushed them, right? He was like, we're going right now. He's like, okay.
Yeah.
And they had to just throw everything together last minute. Then as they were riding out, he got lazy and ordered the troops to carry him and had his troops sweep the dust out of the way in front of him. So he was not only carried, but I know he's not even walking on the ground.
Yeah. Why?
I don't know. So then he arrived at the base, right? Because they had stationed a base out ahead of him, I assume. Mm-hmm. He fired any general who was late to his meeting and dismissed any commanders who were old.
I mean,
he wanted old people out.
I'm not gonna be ageist. That's wrong. It's gonna set himself up poorly, though. I'm guessing.
It's true.
I don't know if there's gonna be battles, but
he also cut their pension, which is just mean.
Also, he should know by now. Like he shouldn't, because he's an idiot. But he should know that he shouldn't soldiers on your side.
He should not be treating the guards and the soldiers this way. I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
You'd think a man who grew up among the soldiers would recognize that.
Yeah.
So this was a huge endeavor, right? And all he got was the surrender of a prince of a British kingdom who was banished by his father. So, like, this British prince didn't really have any power because he was a banished prince.
Yeah.
And so Caligula basically got this banished prince to surrender, like, the 4 acres that he owned or something. Like, he got nothing. This campaign was, like, for nothing.
Listen, I know that we already took most of what you have from you, but if I could have these 4 acres, my self-esteem is really low, and I have this army, and there's a lot of pressure, so just get out.
So I think you're really channeling the mind of Caligula right now, because he claimed that he had won a colossal victory, and yet he was bored with the lack of action, right, on his campaigns. So he would send out his own troops to, like, hide and pretend that they were the enemy, and then he would, like, go and fight them. He wouldn't kill them. Luckily, like, he didn't.
Some restraint. Finally,
he didn't go all out, but he just played a game of hide and seek because he was bored with war. Eventually, he drew his army to face the Channel, and he even positioned his artillery to face the sea. Right, so he lined up his people against the ocean.
Yeah,
and then he told them to run and collect seashells as loot in their war and victory over the ocean.
Oh. Hell yeah!
So again,
Poseidon, completely,
Neptune at this point.
Neptune at this point. Yeah. No, both of them done.
So then, before he left Gaul, he killed every 10th man of the legionnaires who had rebelled against Augustus. So there was, like, some troops there who had rebelled earlier, and he killed every 10th man. So he literally decimated them.
Finishing off some old grudges and having a nice seashell collection to bring back with you to put in some nice little plaques or something. That sounds, it's a nice trip. It's an average summer vacation.
So at this point, Suetonius kind of goes into, it's interesting that he does it kind of at the end, towards the end. He gives a description of Caligula. He describes him as tall, pallid, hairy, with a thin neck and spindling legs, hollow eyes, a broad forehead, and bald. We knew the bald part, but the rest was kind of new.
So gorgeous. So just positively gorgeous. Like, oh, what a man. It's such a striking contrast to Germanicus.
I know, who was, like, so beloved, except for his legs, who were, like, less than 100%.
Yeah.
Mentally, this is interesting too. Suetonius actually goes in kind of the mental state of Caligula, which is, like, he kind of has to do some guesswork here, I assume. But he talks about that he suffered from epilepsy in his boyhood. And this is something that Suetonius kind of knows about because he was one of the first to write about Julius Caesar's fits of epilepsy, because Julius Caesar also had kind of these kind of fits. So I actually don't think that Suetonius is, like, making stuff up here. I think that this is, like, documented stuff about Caligula as he's growing up.
Yeah.
Caligula would often suddenly feel faint, but his worst symptom was insomnia. He, on average, got about 3 hours of sleep a night. And he was plagued by visions and nightmares. And when he did sleep, he dreamed that he spoke with the gods. So now you kind of are getting a look at kind of when he claims that he would talk to Jupiter. Maybe to him he did, like, he actually, like, in his dreams would just be, like, in his, like, sleep deprived state, he was off his rocker.
No, a sleep deprived mind is not a healthy mind.
And Suetonius believes that these issues resulted in his overconfidence and his kind of, like, nervous nature, right? Because he was kind of a paranoid, nervous guy. Like, for instance, Caligula hated the gods but cowered before lightning. So he would talk a big game, but then whenever lightning would show up, he would, like, run whenever there's an actual threat.
It sounds like my dog. My dog used to
do the same deal.
No fear of humans, but lightning, definitely.
Another thing that he talks about is that Caligula paid no attention to the fashion of the day. He would wear things wrong or even wear women's clothing. Once, I like this move, he dyed his beard gold and walked around with a trident, lightning bolt, and a serpent staff. So he just, like, had all sorts of,
a lot of different gods.
I
like
know,
that would be a interesting cosplay.
He's doing a weird crossover cosplay.
Just mixing genres.
This is my OC character. It's Zeus and Poseidon and Apollo all were one.
I call him Zeus Tunlo.
Or I guess, God, I always default to the Greek names. I guess it'd be Jupiter, Neptune, and I don't. Mercury is Hermes. I don't remember what Apollo's Roman name is.
I think Apollo stayed the same, but I'm not sure. Anyway, their ship, not their ship name. Their cross container.
their ship
name would be tough.
Yeah. He also dressed up like Venus, so, like, a more coherent cosplay at that point, I guess. And then he wore the armor of a victorious general before even leaving Rome. So when he went on his campaign, he would wear, like, the traditional victory armor when he hadn't done anything yet.
See, when you were saying that, I was thinking that you meant like a particular general, and I was like, did he just steal some generals?
He was like, "You take off your clothes. They're mine
Give
now."
mine.
I would not.
Your
put it
wife,
past him.
mine. Your clothes, mine. All of it, mine. I'm gonna kill you and take your money.
So the arts. You were right. He loved the arts. He loved gladiatorial arts. He loved singing, dancing. He even did these things himself. He was a singer. He danced. He drove chariots. He fought with real weapons. He did all these sorts of duels. But he couldn't swim. That's just something that Suetonius added, which was kind of weird.
Maybe, I mean, it's a good little tidbit to go along with the seashell thing. He could,
Right? He was like,
he probably didn't want to go near it.
I seek dominance over the ocean.
Yeah.
So then I have a little section here talking about the people that he loved. So the people that he treated well. They were very few.
Half a person.
there was a man named Mnenster who was a comedian. And if anyone made a noise during a performance, he would have them dragged out and beat him himself. So he would like drag out people who like made noise during his performance and beat him, which you'd think that he was a comedian, there'd be laughter. But no, he wanted to completely enjoy the art without any outside interruption.
I will say, I know
yeah.
I've been doing a lot of justification for Caligula,
That's
and
okay,
I'm
go
not
ahead.
gonna go all in, but I will say I do like having just like a nice peaceful, like depending on who I'm with. With my friends, I can watch a movie and I don't mind if it's quiet. But then sometimes you just want to sit there and enjoy the thing for the thing itself. So, I mean, laughter is a little bit overboard. You want that?
Well,
but,
and
like,
no
texting
defense
during the
here
movie.
as well. He didn't kill these people. He just
Yeah.
beat them.
You
But,
just hurt them.
as far as
significantly.
Caligula punishments go, that's not bad.
Yeah, he could do a lot worse. That's probably what he was telling them as he was
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
them. Like, you don't know what I could do to you.
He also loved the leek green faction. So the chariots, right? Like the racing teams, there were different factions and they all had different colors, right? There was like the greens and I think there was blue and maybe red. And so he was just a hardcore sports fan, for like a diehard fan for his team, right? Which was the green faction.
Yeah.
He often dined and spent the night in their stables, right? Just hanging out with them. He once gave one of the drivers 20,000 gold pieces as a gift, just because he liked him. But Caligula's favorite member of the green faction was Cincinnatus, who was a horse. I see your
An
interest.
animal lover.
He would guard the neighborhood with troops the night before a race so that no one would disturb Cincinnatus' slumber. He gifted him a marble stable, an ivory stall, purple blankets, and a jeweled collar. He also gave this horse a house, a team of slaves, and furniture to allow for his guests to sit as they admired him. So he like installed couches in this horse's stable so that people could admire this horse.
If I was an ancient Roman peasant, I would have done
I'd be
everything in my
so-
power to kill this man. I would have just given up. I would have just been like, either I'm dying or he is. Like, I just all on the line. I would end him.
So this is the horse who he considered awarding a consulship because he loved him so much.
Did the horse considered? Was it not successful?
It according to Suetonius, he didn't actually make him a consul,
They
but
should have tried it. They should have tried it for a day.
yeah, how much
Like,
worse could he do?
Yeah, just see what happens.
I did mention this kind of in the aside where this came up before, but there's been some scholars who've kind of thought about how this could have been a move to kind of be a dig at senators and consuls, because he's basically just saying a horse could do your job. Like, it wouldn't matter if I replaced you with a horse because, like, you're stupid. But after reading kind of the inner workings of Caligula's mind, I don't know if he thought it that well through. I think he's just like,
No,
I love
he just
this horse.
loved the horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the horse can say nay as well. It can make a lot of important decisions.
Yeah.
And no positive, no eyes. But a
No
lot of
ever
nays.
positive ones. So now, unfortunately, very sad, we are approaching the death of Caligula.
Oh, I know what
So-
I said earlier about ending him, but I'm sad.
So 2 assassination attempts were thwarted. However, the assassins escaped execution, which is very weird,
Good for them.
worked with the royal guard themselves.
Hmm.
So the colonel of the guard was named Cassius Chaerea, and Caligula would constantly make fun of him. He called him effeminate and would stick out his middle finger at him. Which
So the middle figure has not the middle figure. The middle finger has existed for that long. Huh.
I think because it looks like a penis, right? Because it's like just like the middle is like the
You're
penis
right.
part.
Mhm.
I believe that's the. I don't know if that's the
No,
origin, but
I think you're right. I think that's true.
Editing Zion here for one final time to clarify something. Not only was the gesture of the middle finger around during Roman times, but it was actually also around for the Greeks. In Aristophanes' The Clouds, the gesture is used for comedic effect. And of course, as we all pretty much guessed, it does refer to a penis, or more specifically to anal sex and the degrading nature of it, and how it can be used to insult someone. Okay, now that's out of the way, back to the podcast and the end of the story of Caligula.
So already the colonel of his guard didn't have a great relationship with Caligula. Then there were some bad omens. There was a statue of Olympian Jupiter, which was being disassembled, and there was reports that it screamed as it was being taken apart.
Sorry,
No, I'll give you a second.
I wish more statues screamed. I think the world would be more interesting.
Imagine you're just taking apart your Lego set and like the little minifigure just like starts shrieking.
You're just walking by the Lincoln Memorial. You just
So then the capital at Capua was struck by lightning on the Ides of March. Not a good omen.
No, not at all.
And then Caligula asked Sulla the soothsayer his fortune, right? And the soothsayer said that he would die very soon. So that's like less of an omen and more just like, sorry, dude.
A lot less vague than the Oracle of Delphi. Just
I
going
know.
on.
It's very true.
If I would ask for my money back, I'd be like, please, like, can you be a little bit more abstract? Like, give me a riddle or something.
Can you like try something? Yeah.
Yeah, you will die at the age of 31. Like 31 in
dog
negative dog years. Yeah.
So then but I think kind of the same deal. He didn't believe him and went to a different soothsayer.
Oh.
And this soothsayer said, "Beware of Cassius." And he was like, "Oh, okay," but he forgot that the colonel of his guard was named Cassius. So he executed a man named Cassius Longinus, who was the governor of Asia.
I mean, was Cassius? I feel like Cassius was probably a pretty common name too.
Yeah,
it could have gone worse. He could have just killed everybody.
Well, so he must have just known his captain as Kyria, right? Because that's his surname. So he just was like, "Oh man, Kyria, he told me to be aware of Cassius's. I'm gonna kill the governor of Asia."
Yeah, the colonel was just like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
It's like, "Oh,
yeah, do that." Yep.
Good. Your intelligence knows no bounds, my lord."
Or maybe Caligula just got so used to insulting the colonel that he didn't know his real name.
He didn't know his name at all.
Hey, you! It's just
Hey,
some kind
you
of
loser.
yeah.
So then one night, Caligula dreamed that he stood by Jupiter's throne, but the god kicked him and he tumbled into darkness.
A little soccer ball
The
man.
next morning, he splashed blood on himself and sacrificed a flamingo.
I have no comment on that.
No comment.
Just like it.
So then, on the 24th of January, Caligula was walking after going to the theater. He saw some boys who had been summoned from Asia practicing the Trojan War dance, which I didn't go into and I don't really know what it is exactly, but I assume it's like a reenactment of the Trojan War in some sort of dance.
It's probably a TikTok dance. We can look it
true.
up later.
He stopped to watch them. Then as he stopped to watch them, the colonel, Cassius, walked up behind him and shouted, "Take this," and stabbed him in the neck. Then
Nice.
Cornelius Sabinus, the other colonel of the guard, because I guess there's two, also stabbed Caligula. And then the entirety of the guard kind of just went and started stabbing him.
I'd like to think it was unplanned. It just started off with Cassius,
we gotta
and
do
then
it now.
everybody, are we doing this? Are we doing I thought this was a joke. Okay, we're doing it.
So Caligula died at the age of 29. He
29 years too many.
He had ruled, and this blew me away. He had ruled for 3 years, 10 months, and 8 days. I thought that that's a lot to pack into almost 4 years.
He did a lot.
I know.
He caused a lot of carnage in a
It's true.
short amount of time. Impressive.
He was hastily cremated and buried in the Lamian Gardens, where some said that his ghost haunted them until his sisters, the living ones, exhumed him and gave him a proper burial. So that's the end of the story of Caligula, or
I miss
Gaius
him.
Caesar. You miss him already.
I miss Gaius Caesar so much. What a person.
Yeah.
What an individual. Just
What you think?
I liked it a lot. It's insane. It's insanity. Probably like the people did not have like Suetonius is able to put it in a nice bite-sized
Mhm.
like the highlights and the greatest hits that like people probably were not even aware of something that was happening. But just hearing it, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah,
What an evil man.
I know
What a
it's insane. And the thing is, I picked this one obviously because it was one of the most entertaining ones, but the other emperors in Suetonius's like compendium are also pretty wild. Like I mean he has a section on Tiberius, right?
Mhm.
It's the one that's right before this one.
Yeah.
Uh and then he goes all the way. Yeah, so there's like a lot more juice here, I think. So I think I will probably be coming back and revisiting the Roman emperors again because they I think are ripe for, like you said, just like the spectacle of their lives is just mind-boggling.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I'm sure that the next emperor will do a wonderful job.
He'll
Just a
do a much
class
better
act
job. Yeah,
across the
I think you're
board.
probably right. So I think this is something that we've kind of done towards the end. So is there a lesson that you think that we could take away from the life of Gaius Caesar, otherwise known as Caligula?
Yeah. When people say that you can't cross a certain bay, just waste a lot of boats doing it, and
Just
you're
yeah,
guaranteed to just have a great life the
it's
rest
true.
going forward. Just cross bays whenever you
Yeah.
get the
So
chance.
what I'm hearing is just do it, right? If anyone doubts you,
Yeah,
just do it.
just do it. Just
Just
do
do
it,
it.
and then more.
And more. Go beyond.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Nick, for joining me on this episode. Is there
Thank you very much.
anything? Is there anything that like this isn't something that I do because normally because like Sean and stuff don't necessarily have things to plug. But I didn't know if you wanted to like my viewership is fairly limited, but I didn't know if you wanted to plug your website or anything like that, or any of your stories or things like or anything.
No, I
Um,
appreciate that. I have a website called Conquest, Conquest. My Twitter and Instagram handles are the same. And I'm working on stories. I haven't been super active on my website, but I'm working on some new material right now. So if you want some sci-fi stories, I should have some of those rolling out soon.
cool.
But thank you, I appreciate that, and thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. You're very good at
I'm glad.
making history a lot of fun. So thank you.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. Okay, so thank you everybody for listening. Goodbye.
That was
Mwah.
classic.